right, perfect. Okay, everybody, welcome to Mastermind Monday. As always, honored to have this time to share with you specific things that you can do in your business for your golfers, for your location, and for your business to help it grow, have success, and really make an impact. So today we're going to dive into more about coaching as all of us start to enter our seasons. Maybe some of you in Florida might be just coming out of it, but there's still a lot to be learned about coaching the game of golf on the golf course. And so you will know, as the founder of RGX and somebody who's been very passionate about coaching the game on the course for a long time, I love to share the ideas that I see to work best to help people have what we call those aha moments. And today what I want to do is just sort of talk to you about this concept about how do you get somebody to see something that they don't currently see, right? That's really the art of being a great coach, I believe, is that for many years when I first started off, I would struggle out there trying to explain to people why the short game was so important. I would try and give them books. I would go ahead and tell them to watch videos. I would show them stats from the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, and they're all great things. But inevitably, people wouldn't change until they saw how important it was for themselves. And so today, what I want to do is share with you my number one playing lesson that really highlights the short game. And as I go through this, I'm going to give you iterations of how to do this with different types of players. Today, I'm going to focus in on more of my low handicap golfers. So to me, that's, anybody under, say, a 12 handicap, somebody who's looking to break 80 a little bit more consistently, all the way down to somebody who's shooting in the 60s consistently and playing college golf. This is an outstanding game to play with them. At the same time, I will show you how somebody who's shooting 100 or 110 can also use this game. So let's go ahead and, as always, grab out a pen, a paper, an iPad, your phone, whatever you take notes on, because it's vitally important to take notes, and then obviously go and implement it when you're done. So we'll start, as always, with a question. So the first question I have for all of you today is, how do you get your players to see the importance of the short game? How do you do it right now? So I'm going to put it in the chat box right here and say, hi, I'd love to hear from you. And I'm going to give you some of the examples that I've tried and see if you relate to those. So first of all, you tell them, okay? Scott Bice, I love it. Showing them stats. I love stats. We're going to talk about those today. I then found myself telling them again and again and again and again and again, often with no actual success on them embracing what I was telling them. Show them. I love getting out there and I will chip alongside them, and I'll show them, hey, I just hit it to 2 feet, you hit it to 20 feet. And that's another great way to go ahead and have them sort of start to make change. I would have them, as I said, read articles about the short game, go and check out all the data that's out there, go and watch videos on YouTube, not about how to chip, but the importance of chipping and the stats from the PGA Tour, like scrambling and things like that. So what other ones do we have? So everybody, come on, I know it's not early morning for most of you. You're not all on the West Coast like me. Letting them realize that 80% of their handicap is from 100 yards and in. Way to go, David Lepore. Absolutely. I mean, giving them proof and data to help them understand that, I think, is vitally important. What else, everybody? Come on, I see a bunch of smiling faces there. I see Kevin Coombs typing. I'm looking forward to seeing what his response is going to be. So who's out there struggling? Or let me ask you this. Give me a thumbs up or raise your hand if you'd say that you struggle to get your students to actually go ahead and work on their short game. Are they coming to your classes saying, playing 9 holes without woods? That's a great one, Billy. I love that. You see, for me, I remember the day that it happened for me, and this was in the first coaching program I ever taught. And I just remember getting to the course and I'd say to people, hey, thanks, Justin. Yeah, thumbs up on the difficulty of doing that. Hey, what do you want to work on today? And I would sort of test them, even though I knew I wanted to work on short game, putting, lag, putting, chipping, pitching. And I remember one day, and the group was like, we all need to do short game. And like everybody unanimously said it. And they didn't say it to please me. They said it because they had figured out that the way they were going to shoot lower scores was by working on their short game, particularly their wedges. Because what I'd found is we'd become pretty good at short putts. We started to work our lag putting out pretty well, and we'd understood how to take out the lob wedge, throw it out, and get a hybrid and chip with a hybrid or a 7-iron around the green. So we were starting to get pretty effective. But what we started to realize for my better players was, if you want to go ahead and shoot lower scores, as in break 80 consistently or break 70, we've got to figure out how to wedge the ball closer to the hole. Kevin Coombs, the pressure, always include short game drills and instruction during off-course sessions. Play 9 holes, chipping and putting. Colin, I love that one, right? Have them play 9 holes up and down, see what they shoot. So again, I love all of this, and I think all of these answers are correct. I'm just going to share with you what I found to be the best way to do it out on the golf course, so they can have that aha moment and come in saying, okay, coach, I got to work on this. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start off with what I call, the game is called perfect drive. And I'm going to go into some details to this, and I am going to open it up for Q&A today a little bit more, because I want to actually have you guys understand what I'm, how I'm saying this and how I do this. So what perfect drive is we go to whatever tee box that player normally plays, and we'll go ahead and we'll get it set up. And so sometimes I'll have a group where I might have a couple players off the whites and a couple players off the blues. And we'll go ahead and we'll peg it up and we'll hit our drives. And on every hole, I want them to play aggressively. I want them to play their driver, and they're going to go ahead and rip driver, and I'm going to allow them to be aggressive, okay? And no matter where their drive goes, I mean, they can duck hook it out of bounds, they can peel it into the trap, they can hit it into the water, they can hit it into the trees. What we're going to do is we're going to pick the ball up if we can find it. We're going to hop in the car and we're going to drive over to somewhere inside of 100 yards. And what I want to do here is I want to find what I would call their perfect, wedge distance. And so, for most high school players, it might be around about 90 yards with a sand wedge. Some players, it might be 80. I'm not going to get sort of into a 50-yard zone. I'm really looking for somewhere between, 70 and maybe 120 if they hit the ball a long way and they've got a really consistent wedge from 110, 115 yards. But usually I find it to be around about 85 to 95 yards. And then what we do from there is we go ahead and we just drop the ball down and we play in from that position, okay? So, for example, the first hole at Empire Ranch, it's the 10th hole, because I'm always teeing off on the back 9 early in the morning, is a dog leg right. You can't see the green. They hit driver. They'll usually have like 135 with a blind shot. We'll pick it up, walk up to 90 yards, drop it, perfect clear shot straight into the middle of the green, okay? And so what we'll do is we'll play the ball in from there and we'll do the score. So the next hole's a par 5. So what we'll do there is we'll hit driver, pick it up, drive all the way up to the first for the 100-yard marker, drop it at the 95 if that's their number, and we'll play in from there. The next hole's a par 3. It's 160 yards, but the red tees are right about 100 yards. So we'll go up to the front of those, we'll drop it at 95, we'll play in from there. So you get the idea, right? Every hole is going to go ahead and be a par 3 in theory after a perfect drive. Now, the beauty about this is that our golf course has 2 par 3s and 2 par 5s on the back 9. So at the end of it, okay, we just add up our normal score, right? So obviously they wouldn't have a shot on a par 3 and they would have 2 on a par 5. So you'd add 9 to the score and there's your total. Okay, so is everybody making sense of this? Have I made it way too complicated? We hit a drive, go to exactly where they would have their most perfect drive ever. We drop the ball, and at the end of the round, we add 9 to that score. It's called perfect drive. So anybody got a question? Raise your hand, give me a thumbs up, unmute yourself before I move on. Because if that doesn't make sense, we need to hash that out first, okay? All right, I think we're all making sense of this. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to let them see their own weaknesses in their wedges. Okay, and this is how we're going to do it. And you'll hear me say this, you've heard me probably say this before, is there's no point in being a good wedge player. Okay, it just doesn't help to be a good wedge player, and I'm going to prove why. Okay, you've either got to be great or you might as well be average. Because what we want to start to do is as we go through this 9 holes, we're going to keep their score, but most importantly, we're going to track the proximity of their first putt. The easiest way to do this, obviously, is have them pace it off and then times it by 3. So on the scorecard, I'm going to have their score to par, where they're even, 1 under, 1 over on each hole, and then the length of their putt. And that's all I want to know, their first putt, how far is it? Because this is where we've got to start to use the data to prove to them why they're not getting better, why, in fact, if they became the best driver of the golf ball in history, they would probably only drop 1 to 2 strokes off of their game. So think about this. For the 74, 77, 81 shooter, we go ahead, we drop them at 95 yards, and what do you think they normally hit it to? Well, they normally hit it to about 25 feet. maybe 20 feet. Maybe they hit a good one and it's 14 feet or 15 feet. But the point is as we start to show them the stats, the reason why they keep making par is because you don't make putts from 15 feet. You just don't. That's statistically proven. You can't make putts from 15 to 30 feet consistently. And so what we want to do is as they start to go ahead and get that first length putt, I'm not going to tell them this as they go, guys and gals. I'm just out there on the golf course and we're measuring the first putt and tracking their score to par. Now, inevitably, what will happen is if they normally shoot a 38, they'll shoot a 37. If they normally shoot a 35, they'll shoot a 34 or a 33. So they might improve by 2. And what you're saying is you've just become the best driver of the ball. Okay, so you've basically added 50 yards to your driver. You don't miss a fairway and you improved your score by 2. What it's doing is highlighting the problem that you don't hit your wedges close to the hole. So even if we could increase our club head speed by 15 miles an hour and get you to be more consistent than anybody that's ever hit the golf ball, you still would only improve by 2. So the proof is that, the way to shoot lower scores is hit it closer. And so this is where, as you said, Scott, hold on, let me see if I can see my little sheet off to the right here, okay? Because I'm going to bring up my data here, right? If we look at this is the conversion rates when we're looking at tour players, right? So from 76 to 100 yards, they average, 11.11 feet. So basically 12 feet from the hole. And from 12 feet, they're 34% make. And this is the best players on the best greens average, right? So to me, if they're outside of 12 feet on the greens that I play on with the putting strokes that I look at, they're not going to make a birdie. So what we want to start to do is have them really comprehend like how difficult it is to make putts from where they're hitting. So this is the stat chart that I bring up for them. And so most of them at the end of this round, we've played 9 holes, right? And we go ahead and tally up the total of distance from the hole and divide it by 9. And they'll usually be, 22 feet, 19 feet, but not much better than that. And I mean, if it's an 80 shooter, they might be 35, 40 feet because they miss a green once, or they hit it to 70 or 80 feet because they chunk it or blade it. So now what we do is we go to 20 feet, okay, and we go ahead, maybe let's say 22, 23 feet, and we have them hit 10 putts from that distance when they come off the golf course. And inevitably, they 3-putt one and they make one. Normally, they actually don't even make one. So they're 1 over par with the best wedges that they've ever hit. And this is where I'd say to you is the reason why I don't want my players to be good wedge players is because it doesn't help. Because if you do hit it to, let's just say 30 to 35 feet or 40 feet, as a single digit handicap, you're most likely going to lag it up there to about 2 to 3 feet and then tap it in for par anyway. So the difference between hitting it to 15 feet, 18 feet, and 35 feet is really, there's no difference because you're going to just 2-putt them. And this is where I'm saying to my players, you've got to put so much time in to become an outstanding wedge player, because really what you've got to start to do is you've got to start to hit it to 6 feet and 8 feet and 10 feet and give yourself a really realistic chance to actually go low. And so what I'm looking for from my players and the ones that really grasp this is this idea that they go out, play 9 holes, and they're coming in, 4 or 5 under par because their wedges are now in great shape. Now, for my high school players, what I love about this is when they go and play a difficult golf course, a lot of times they're pitching back out to 90 yards to then have to make up and down for par, but still saving them a stroke. So what I want to do here is, actually, let me back up one before we move on to the next one right here. What I want to do here is just sort of open this up for everybody and just see what questions do we have so far? Is this making sense? Is this something you could see yourself using on the golf course with your players that, like I said, are looking to break 80 and consistently or lower? So who are we going to pick on first? Brian Jones, I see you're not muted right now. Are you there, buddy?
Yeah.
He doesn't have audio right now then. Okay, what about, I'm seeing Blake later on today. I saw him hop on. Blake, you there? Yeah, Blake, what's your thought on this one? You got to unmute though. There you go.
No, this is excellent stuff. I think it gives I can hear you.
Here, Blake? I'm not hearing Blake. Have I got no audio on? Hold on, Blake. This could be me being really bad. Yeah, this is me. Okay, hold on. MacBook Pro microphone, MacBook Pro speakers. Okay, Blake, you can talk and I can hear you now.
Good job, Will. Nice.
There you go. It's my first time on Zoom. I'm just getting used to this.
No, this is all excellent stuff, and I think it just gives a perspective for the players to know that they don't need to be perfect by any means, and nor do we and give that freedom to the player that perfection is not necessarily what we're looking for, and gives people a good idea of even what the best players in the world are doing, that we don't need to get to that point as well. And I think the one thing that I've learned a lot is like the freedom to make the mistakes and then be able to grind it out when needed. And so having these stats in front of people are just to give a perspective is really important. We do this a lot in our on-course coaching as well, just kind of the knowing that the player is going to be, it's going to be okay if we miss a green. It's going to be okay if we don't hit it to 5 feet.
Yeah, absolutely. So taking the pressure off of them, and actually
while we're from there to be the next.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, so as you were saying that, Joel Suggs actually put something good. He wrote in here, true, but the better their wedges get, the fewer greens they miss, thus eliminating an extra shot. And so this is where I would say this game isn't as helpful when you're working with someone who shoots 90, 95, 100, 105, because they're never going to hit their driver within 100 yards of the green. So they are going to save probably 9 strokes, right? Because they are missing a shot into the green. But the beauty of it is, inevitably, from 100 yards, they still miss greens and they still hit it to 60 feet and 4-putt and have bad scores. So they would think, and this is where, Joel, for a better player, for a higher handicap player, and you said, look, if I made you the best driver in the world, best driver, what do you think you'd shoot? And they normally shoot 51. They'd be like, my God, I'd probably shoot a 40. And inevitably, they go and shoot a 47 because when they hit their hybrid, because they can't get within 100, they hit it to 160, they hit their hybrid, they're maybe 15 yards off the green. So they can chip it onto the green, and they get it to 10 feet, and then they 2-putt. Whereas when they have one less shot, they hit a wedge, well, they miss the green, then they chip it onto 10 feet and 2-putt. So it's almost exactly the same. But I would say that if I was going to work with higher handicap golfers, this is where I would play forward tees and show them that all of that extra distance doesn't help them, because even though they played 50 yards up, they still shot the same score. So this is really for my high school players who are my high school boys mainly, who are like really banging their heads against the wall of why they can't break par more consistently, or my adult player who wants to desperately break 80 and keeps telling me that they've got to work on their full swing and become more consistent. And it gives them such proof so quickly. And that's really what is fun, is that you're able to just go ahead and get data and sort of pour it right out to them, but show them. Because remember, when they go to the putting green, and Blake will be doing this tomorrow because we're going to be hanging out and doing some coaching tomorrow. When they go to the putting green and hit 10 putts from 22 feet, and they realize some of them will 3-putt 3 of them, you're like, can you understand why we started on short putting and then lag putting? Because you can't afford to 3-putt, but you're also not going to make putts from 22 feet. And so what I love about this is as you go through this process, it gets people to buy in and it gets them to start playing these games instead of going to the golf course and just playing their normal game. They actually go out and you say, look, play this game this week, play Perfect Drive and see if you can shoot a 36. And then they finally do it. And inevitably, it gives them a lot of confidence, right? And then that trickles back into their game. That then maybe they move back to the whites or okay, if we're playing this game, they're playing off the whites and they don't hit the most perfect drive, but they're 120, but they can still hit the green and 2-putt from there. So one of the things I was going to show you here, this is some stats a while ago. This is when I was doing my high school stuff back 2014, but I love showing my players this. 30 yards and in is where 52% of all birdies are made on the PGA Tour. So this is why we start with chipping and putting, because it's you've got to get the ball close so you can make the putts. But the 28% are made inside that 40 to 100 yards. And this is to me where I want to show my players that this is how the game is done. Now, how do you get better at that? My belief is, and actually, I will go ahead and have the master. I forgot to think about this, David. I would say that Dave Peltz is the best guy on the planet at teaching the short game, and that's the clock system. So, David, why don't you explain, after working for Dave Peltz for 7 or 8 years, give us your thoughts on the clock system and kind of how you do it. And this is kind of one of my charts that I work with my players.
Yeah, you know what, Will, it's such a simple system. I have what's called a short game matrix. Peltz taught me how to do the short game matrix. And on the top of it, you have your different kind of shots, and on the side of it, you have your different equipment. So you got 4 wedges on the left part of the column and the shots on the top part of the graph. And you have the students go through these wedge shots and their clock, their length of backswing, basically. And when I do this with my students, and I use the launch monitor, obviously, to help them dial in their yardages, and they take that on the golf course and they plug it in and they hit it, 15 feet from the hole, they're like, wow, this stuff really works. So it's just doing the due diligence.
Yeah, what I find is that when I do this with my players, what becomes most important is alignment. Because they'll start hitting the ball so consistently, 77, 76, 77, and then they'll pull it or aim 10 yards, 10 feet, 15 feet left and be like, if I just hit that on target, I've got a 3-foot putt, you know what I mean? But normally it's always distance, you know what I mean? They're 30 feet long, they're 30 feet short. And so what I love to do, David, because I don't have TrackMan, if you're listening, you're welcome to send me one for free. But what I do is I have them basically wedged to each other. So we go up to the 15th hole at Empire, and we set up orange stakes on the ground, and we go out and we're opposite each other, and we basically hit 5 shots at each other, and wherever they land, we write down the chart for them. So we'll say we're using sand wedge, we're at 9 o'clock, 73, 77, 71, 58, 74. And we go through this process and we're filling out each other's wedges and we're doing it in competitions against each other. So we'll have 3 people, right, competing on this end and 3 people on that end. And if you land it inside, basically for my high school kids, if it's 5 yards long or 5 yards short, that's a good enough shot to get a point. And so they go through this process, there's pressure, but they're getting data. And then afterwards, we've got their average, their shortest, their longest, and their gap. And our whole goal is obviously to bring that gap down. Can that gap become 25 and then 20 and then 10 and then 8 and then 7? And the amount of confidence you see in players' games when they can actually hit their wedges. And as David, you said, is if they've got an L wedge, an S wedge, a gap wedge, and a P wedge, I only have 3, but a lot of them have 4. Well, then they've got, somewhere around about 9, somewhere around about 10, 10, 30, and somewhere around about full. I mean, they've got between 9 and 12 different distances at different trajectories. And so to me, it at least gains for most of them that sort of 60 to 120 is dialed in. Now we've got chipping and pitching, we've got chipping dialed in, and now we've got to go into those sort of touch shots from 30 to 50, right? And maybe up to 60. So to me, it's such a vital part, and it allows them to start strategically playing out of trees because they know I'm a good enough wedge player that the worst I'm going to do is bogey, the worst, but I've got a really good chance. My average is around about 15 feet. I've got a good chance of making a par. And so I'll see them lay up on par 5s. I'll see them pitch out when they're in trouble. And that's what, they're doing it over their own accord because they know the data and they actually have proved it to themselves rather than me being like, you should do this because I know more about it than you and you should follow me. So this is really where I'd say for every one of you is first and foremost, start off with perfect drive, get them out on the golf course, get them to play, have fun with it. I always ask them, what do they think they're going to drive? What do they think they're going to shoot? You're the best driver of the golf ball in the world, right? What do you think you're going to shoot? And they'll tell you a 31, and they end up shooting a 35, 1 under par. And these are kids that are usually shooting, 73, 75 in tournaments, okay? And then I go ahead, take the proximity of the first putt, then we head to the putting green and we get 10 putts. And I hit the same 10 putts. I don't even make it difficult. We don't go to left to right and right to left and uphill. 10 of the exact same putts from 22 feet. And usually they don't make any, and they'll 3-putt one of them, right? And then I just say to them, what would you have to change here? I've got to hit it closer. Okay, how do we hit it closer? Well, I'm not good at gauging my wedges. Okay, well then let's start yardage gapping. This is why, and people will say this to me. They'll say, well, I'm a field player. I'm just a field player. And I'm like, yeah, what you mean is you're just bad at hitting your wedges. Because field to me is the difference between that's 91 yards and that is 93 yards. That's feel, that's in between gauges. And anybody that's really good at something, they have metrics or gauges, positions that they know, this is, when I do this, this is what happens. If I choke up half an inch on my 7-iron, I'll cut 5 yards off of it. If I X, Y, and Z, right? So a lot of players, they're just trying to feel 73 yards compared to, I know that's 70. So if I go a little bit more, it's 73. And that's what I think a lot of our high school players struggle, is they're trying to use too much feel and not have specific metrics. Now, I'm not teaching you here how to become golf coaches, because most of you are way more advanced than me at coaching and know way more technicalities about how to teach and biomechanics. I'm just saying is, if I'm going to simplify the game of golf and get my players to shoot lower scores, how do I get them to buy in? How do I get them to understand and make changes themselves? And if I can give them these tools, I found that to be very, very effective on them actually applying what I'm asking them to apply, instead of having the same conversation week in, week out. So let's go ahead and open it up to questions here. We've got about 3 minutes before we got to run. So anybody that wants to unmute themselves, thoughts, feedbacks, questions, or you're welcome to type it into the chat box. Dave Lepore, you said, before a coaching session, during their warm-up, I use my launch monitor on the range along with wedge skills test to challenge them. That's awesome. It is usually fun and convincing to them, because they don't really hit their wedges. Yes, exactly. Absolutely. They don't know how far their wedges go. They think they go 100. I have Scott Weiss, I have an Ernest Sports mobile launch monitor, ESB1, love it, $450. Very cool. With your Mevo, Flight Scope, Vector, TrackMan. The cheap versions for my students is Mevo. Yeah, so there's lots of content out there. And I would say the old version of TrackMan is a shag bag, and you take it out and you dump it, and then you hit golf balls to it and you get yardages that way. It's a little bit slower, a little bit more old school, and you probably have to use balatas if you want to do it that way. So does anyone want to unmute? Any questions? Who's willing to go and put this into play this week? Who's looking forward to getting out there and actually doing it for your own game? Because it will highlight, if you actually do it for your own game, you might see, my wedges aren't maybe as good as I should have them. So as always, everybody, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to hop on this call. For those of you who are in RGX, all these recordings, Mastermind Monday, are sitting in there for you to go back and watch. You can pop into the community, ask questions about them, get on the live calls. And then for those of you who maybe haven't started a journey, maybe want some help in your business, please hop on a call with us. Let's talk. Let's find out how we can help you out, how we can develop you and your business to move forward. As always, everybody, I'll see you next week. Make sure to bring a friend. And I will say, I think it's in 2 weeks from now, I believe, that we've got Carl Morris, who's like Louis Oosthuizen's got sports psychologist. And this guy is phenomenal. He's from the UK. And the stuff he's got is absolutely amazing. So I think it's the first week of May that I'm going to be on with him. So make sure to check out that one. And I'll see you all throughout the week.